Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has been feeling the heat lately from his fellow Democrats.
It all started after he supported a spending bill favored by Republicans earlier this month. Now he's facing calls from all directions to step down as the party's leader in the Senate.
Here he was on Meet the Press Sunday.
Are you feeling pressure to step down?
Look, I'm not stepping down. And let me just say this, Kristen. I knew when I cast my vote against against the government shutdown that there'd be a lot of controversy, and there was. But let me tell you and your audience why I did it, why I felt it was so important. The CR was certainly bad, you know, the continuing resolution, but a shutdown would be 15 or 20 times worse. And I did it out of pure conviction as to what a leader should do and what the right thing for America and my party was.
The skepticism around Schumer's leadership is strong enough that some House Democrats are reportedly pushing Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to primary him.
And it's looking like the Democratic Party's base isn't too happy either. 49% of Democrats disapprove of their party's job in Congress, while only 40% approve, per a Quinnipiac University poll. At this time last year, Democrats had a 75% approval rating.
And what makes it even harder for Democrats is that they can't agree which direction the party should move in. As 45% of Democrats want the party to become more moderate, 29% say no, it should become more liberal, and 22% want it to stay just the same. Various polling data also shows that the vast majority of Democratic voters want their party to resist the Trump administration more fiercely.
If all that wasn't enough, there's another reason Democrats should be worried. Voters are leaving blue states, moving to red states. What does that mean exactly? Well, the American Redistricting Project projects that more congressional seats and electoral votes will be in Republican hands by 2030. Here's comedian Bill Maher on his show recently.
California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over, you know, and the reason why people are voting with their feet is a lot of what your book is about.
Yeah,
taxes and regulation. I certainly been screaming about it forever. We're taxed more than any other state. People are leaving these kind of states for places where they're not, they feel the heavy breath of government on them. It's not that hard.
Meanwhile, Ocasio-Cortez wrote on social media that 23,000 people showed up to her and Sanders' rally this week in Tucson, Arizona. She also wrote that over 34,000 people showed up to Denver. There seems to have been a response from Mother Jones Washington Bureau Chief David Corn, who wrote, "Democrats, there's a demand. Where's the supply?"
Journalist Batya Ungar-Sargon wrote on X, the Democrats used to represent the American working class. They were anti-war, economically populist, and socially moderate. They abandoned these values to cater to over-credentialed college elites. Now Trump represents those values, and he represents those voters. Wise words from Batya, who was a host of Rising as well in the past. The problems for Democrats seem very, very serious, and I think the lack of clear consensus on which direction they should move is a big problem, and then the lack of charismatic and interesting leadership. I do wonder if the calls on Chuck Schumer to resign or face some kind of challenge or to no longer be the leader will continue to increase. I think I'm reasonably confident he will hold on. He will manage to remain the leader, but I don't think it's guaranteed because the frustration toward him is out there, and all the frustration being directed at him instead of Trump is not good for the Democratic Party. But they don't know which way to go.
Well, they don't, but I think there's a big question about whether the difference that they have is ideological, or is it generational, or is it stylistic?
Because it's all those things.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, in terms of the ideology, I think there's a lot of lines have been scrambled between going left, say, on economic policy and being more angry about various inequalities versus the more identitarian politics, which is another branch of the left. But obviously Schumer is the age he is. He's an institutionalist by his nature. He's somebody who, even when he is proclaiming his opposition to Trump, it's all done in a rather inside the beltway kind of fashion, and that's not seemingly what Democratic voters are looking for right now. They see this as a much more existential battle for America between themselves and Trump. One caveat that I would put in all this, Robby, is yes, I don't deny that the Democrats have big problems, and yes, their favorability ratings are low, and yes, Donald Trump won last November. That's pretty clear. When people like Bill Maher say things like that, this looks like game over, I'm automatically skeptical about that when it's said of any major political party. And I think there are quite a few parallels right now to the first presidential election I covered in this country was 2004. George Bush, massively hated by the Democratic grassroots, won re-election. And there was all sorts of hand-wringing that America's a center-right, sort of war-loving country and Democrats will never get into power again. Fast forward 4 years, Barack Obama wins easily for various reasons. Financial crisis, Iraq gone bad, etc. So, you know, the game is not over, and people tend to be too quick to write obituaries.
No, I very much agree with you. And then when Democrats won in 2008, then you had the same kind of certainty, the permanent Democratic majority, which was going to be based on more minority voters, the older voters being more Republican, aging, dying, and younger voters, and the rising of minorities, the birth rates of people of color was going to usher in more immigrants, usher in a era of permanent Democratic governance. What has turned out, as I don't think you were on last week when we discussed this, I was looking at, David Shore looked more closely at the stuff we already know about, but Trump's, he has scrambled. Trump's gains with young people and minority voters and men, in those categories in particular, those three factors, young people, men, minority voters, immigrants themselves, it is so massive. It is unbelievable. You wouldn't have believed it, 8 years ago when he first was disliked by those groups and was most popular with older voters who watch TV and cable news and knew him from reality TV entertainment. But now he's a figure of the modes of communication that young people do: social media, alternate media, podcasts, TikTok.
Sure.
And older voters are the most reliable Democratic voters. Older and wealthier and more highly educated, and women. So that's a long way of saying you're right. Maher is incorrect to say it's game over. Although the trend there he was noting is interesting. He was interviewing Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, who have a new book out called Abundance that is one, I think, blueprint for how Democrats should reorient their policies really to be more appealing. And it's very Robby friendly stuff. It's very much about how progressive governance has gone awry in blue municipalities because there's too much red tape, bureaucracy, too much regulation, specifically with respect to housing, the environmental concerns getting in the way of the housing supply, that we can't build things easily because there's too much red tape. Very Robby-friendly territory, and that's their pitch to Democrats to start fixing some of those things, and they'd make governance in blue states more popular. I think they're right on the policy merits. Whether that will end up being an appealing electoral message overall, or B, specifically the right way for Democrats to become more electorally competitive, I think that's less borne out. I think, while I agree with their ideas, I think there's a certain overconfidence that because our ideas are right, they will win in the public square, that I never have myself for my own ideas.
The other thing I'd say just on the blue states governance question is, people always, particularly from the right and some critical people on the Liberal side, always make that argument. Gavin Newsom, last time there was an election in California, won by 19 points. Kathy Hochul won by much less than that in New York, but comfortably enough. So this idea that, democratic governance is this catastrophe, well, the voters who are governed by Democrats don't necessarily seem to think that. The population question is actually more mixed than the popular caricature suggests. 11 states that lost population in 2022 gained it in 2023, and that included New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, several Democratic-dominated states.
Well, and also if California loses representation because so many Democrats moved to Texas, that could be a loss of, House seats, but an improvement in the electoral fortunes of the Democratic Party in the presidential electoral college race. So.
Texas finally winnable for Democrats.
I don't think it's going to happen, but
we shall see.
All right, up next, why are so many law firms caving to Trump? We'll discuss. Stay tuned.